What's up, everyone? Oh, are you trying to sit tall and proud? You got to sit taller and prouder.
Just a posture check.
Just, oh, yeah. Oh, man. I needed a good pre-stream stretch.
Oh, just had to trust the Papa real quick.
Yeah, I just had to take a second to trust the Papa.
Yeah.
Man.
Trust the Papa.
Welcome, everybody. What a sad day it is for us. It was already kind of going to be a downtrodden podcast for the night.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we got our big boohoos out last week.
We did. That is very true. I don't know how I did it, but I found the strength to stay true to what I said on the pod, which was like I was just going to watch these games, these last games with gratitude and like just enjoy it, just enjoy watching them go. And I did. I don't know how, but I did.
Yeah. I actually had a vision of you because I've seen you at sports events. I know how you do.
Yeah.
You know, watching and enjoying with gratitude. I know exactly what that looks like in action. You know, clapping and shouting. And when we were giving RNG a run for their money, it was like I was there with you. I just knew how, like, it was that energy, right? Of like, thank goodness we came out and popped these guys in the lip once or twice.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's all about. Because that's what we were playing for at this point.
Someday in closer taking like insane like 1v2s and stuff. It's like, yep. All day. I want to see that all day.
Go for
it.
Go for it, young men.
All right. Well, today we mourn the loss of our 2022 year. Did not advance out of Groups for Worlds, which I think was kind of the expectation, but still sad to realize that expectation in the manner in which we did. We also mourn the loss of our GM, PapaSmithy, beloved GM, who is now his tenure is now over. His contract has not been renewed, and he will not ever be forgotten by us. And because of that, I'm a good boy. I got myself a Rip It tribute cherry lime to pay tribute to these last years. I mean, 3 full years, a little bit more if you count the planning angle, right?
Yeah.
Of consistently getting better and being competitive. It was rough at first. We got out of the darkness and we became a very good League of Legends team. And then we became a championship League of Legends team. And then we became a contender. And it's, it was a very good window, a very good run. And then today it was announced that PapaSmithy is leaving. So that leaves everybody with, I think, questions, trying to figure out what this means for the future of the org, what this means for the future of the league. And everybody, I think, was caught off guard by this for the most part. I think all of us expected changes in some form or fashion, but I'm not sure many people expected this change. And if they did expect this change, maybe not right out of the gate. So we're going to spend...
I mean, I'll make this point in more detail.
Yeah.
But there's an angle here where this makes sense, right?
Yeah, for sure. That doesn't make it easy or anything like that. But I think what we'll do tonight is focus most of our conversation on PapaSmithy. Obviously, Worlds happened. week 2 of our Worlds happened, and we'll hopefully get to talk about that as well. But we'll kind of run with the current news and give our reaction to it and what we think it means, and then hear from some of you guys. We got a ton of takes and comments and questions on the back of this, so there'll be plenty to discuss. So we should probably start out by actually reading the statement, right?
Yeah. Before you do that, can I just make one point?
Oh, sure.
And it's this, right? It's trust the Papa. So I just want to say it's hard to say goodbye. It's a bummer to see, because he's been great for the org. I don't think there's any question about that. Like, you can't question the accomplishments, the resume, any of that. I don't feel like this is a loss of trust in the Papa, at least for us from the fans' perspective, right? It's
Yeah.
like, look, at some point, people have to go their separate ways. He did the statement, which we'll read in just a minute. Um, but I just feel like that's worth saying, that it's like, "Oh, but you don't trust the Papa now, do you?" It's like, well, no. Trust the Papa's always been about, you have to kinda go back and remember when we first started saying this, and it's when things weren't great, right? And trusting the Papa got us basically everything we have to be proud about for the league program. So that feels, I think, it's like mission accomplished. We trusted the Papa as a collective, both the org and the fans, and we were rewarded greatly. So I just want to say that this doesn't feel like we're abandoning. That's why I can wear this shirt unironically, right? It's like there's nothing now that he's not the GM. There's nothing that diminishes everything we've accomplished, and that's partially what this is. It's a celebration of that, right?
And honestly, at its essence, right, the trust the Papa message was like, be patient and give it time.
Hmm.
And guess what message needs to be delivered now to us if we, if we're going to move forward? The same message, give it time. Let's be patient and see what develops before we make any judgments. So,
Yep.
yeah, this is a sad one. It's a sad one though.
Hmm.
And I will say that seeing everybody's reaction online, like it's universal. Everybody is sad to see him go and grateful for what he did for the team and for the org. And that's
Hmm.
it's not often that the 100 Thieves community agrees
We are
nearly
united.
universally on things. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
if that doesn't speak highly enough of the tenure, nothing else will. But now let's go into Papa's actual statement. So after 100 Thieves posted their announcement that his contract was over and that he was not going to be renewed, he posted not a twit longer, right, but a
Hmm.
longer message. So what I want to do, I'll put this up on the screen though. I don't think you guys will be able to read it honestly because it's very like small and condensed. So we'll read it in its entirety first, and then we'll kind of work through it and stop and talk about some of the things that are in it. There are a couple lines in this statement that I think um, are kind of sticking points for people where they're trying to draw a conclusion on why this happened. What went
Hmm.
into this decision, and a couple of lines in this give some insight in some way into it. But you can draw as we saw in the listener takes that came in today, you can draw some very different conclusions
Yes.
about that. Um, just on the same words, you can come to different conclusions. So we'll work through it and give our takes on what we think this means and what we think it doesn't mean. And yeah, so let me put this up here for you guys. Again, I know you probably will not be able to read this, so I apologize for that. But we're doing what we can here. So let me actually even fit this on the screen. Believe it or not, I did have it queued up. Anyway, all right. It says, it has been an amazing journey over the past 3 years with 100 Thieves. After living and breathing League of Legends on the broadcast side for 6 years, I wanted an opportunity to start a program from scratch and get to truly experience what it meant to compete at the highest level. As a caster, you narrate wins and losses, you show respect to competitors and elevate their achievements as best as you can. But the rush of designing the processes, hiring the staff and players, setting the team culture, and seeing it all unfold week to week is something impossible to distill into words. That's why it's so hard to believe this 100T chapter has come to an end. After multiple rounds of talks with management before Worlds, it was clear that the shared vision of the kind of League of Legends program we wanted to build together in 2019 no longer fit the goals and aspirations of 100T for 2023. Ultimately, this meant supporting our LCS team through Worlds and then going our separate ways. In competitive sports, you rarely are able to move on from a project with your head held high. In this case, an 18-month run of success with back-to-back finals appearances, delivering 100 Thieves the first ever LCS championship won by a franchising era org, and making it to the World Championship twice in a row. What I'm most proud of in my time at 100T is the depth of the League of Legends program we were able to build. We were able to be champions or finalists at the LCS Academy and amateur level in 2022, and I feel so proud that in the 3 years of my tenure at 100 Thieves, 15 players who played in our amateur team, 100 Thieves Next, made it to an academy team. And 14 players who played for 100 Thieves Academy have played in the LCS. It was always a treat to see players at the LCS studio whose faces lit up seeing me and talking about how much they enjoyed their time with 100T. That stuff made my day just as much as any team win or achievement we were able to take down. There's too many people to thank by name in this one statement. Every single player, staff member, coach, or analyst who played a part in 100 Thieves LCS, 100 Thieves Academy, or 100 Thieves Next, every single org member who helped out the team or me personally as I matured into the GM role, and every single fan, that's you guys, that cheered our players and teams. You all played a part in a wonderful 3 years I'll never forget. I'm on the lookout for my next big project in esports. Just like the last two, I'll put my head down, be humble, and work my way to the top or die trying. Isn't life boring any other way? Love you all, Chris PapaSmithy Smith. So
Nice.
that is nice. There's a lot there.
Yep.
So overall, like, I read the tone of this as fair, like pretty neutral overall, pretty neutral and pretty warm. It's not like the glowing, like, this has been the best thing ever and I'm so sad to miss, it wasn't that glowing. But I think it was a very respectful, neutral tone. There are some things in there that I think we should break down and talk about what they are going to mean for us. So, he says the thing that was, impossible to distill into words was the rush of designing the processes, hiring the staff and players, setting the team culture, and seeing it all unfold week to week. He said that rush was impossible to distill into words. He mentioned specifically designing processes, hiring people, right? And then team culture. It's hard to say, it's hard to say what the team culture was before he came, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's like it was like a very fun org for the first year. Like everything was kind of like Wild Wild West, happening quickly. Tons of personality from the people who we had, And then in 2019, when the losses started happening, it just, there was kind of a void there. And I don't think I don't fault 100T for this, because I think everybody has growing pains when they do something new. But there's definitely, I think, a difference in how players and staff who left would talk about 100 Thieves from before PapaSmithy and after PapaSmithy, right? It seemed like during, in the past 3 years, everybody has a lot of really great things to say. Talk about the players who are let go from amateur, let go from academy, like even the ones that are let go from LCS tend to be very positive, very thankful, very grateful in a way that, we didn't always see before. And I think that is somewhat of a testament to the team culture, that's been put in. And I always had a sense that it was a very professional team environment compared to the others, And so, I don't know. That's probably something that shouldn't go overlooked when we talk about this.
Yeah. I think you can look at the replies to his tweet. Just a number of different people will come out to say like, "Hey, thanks for everything." Right? Like, it's interesting because even if you have a docuseries, you don't get to see the conversations that the GM's having.
Yeah.
You don't really know what he's up to. It's clear based on people reaching out to him that he did a lot of work, just kind of building that team and the culture and the community, right? Which is, I think that's always one of the hardest things to quantify, and certainly one of the things that you can miss the most when it's gone if you don't find a good way to replace that. So that will be something that I hope the team finds a way to preserve, right? And that, it's like there's reason to hope. You think about the other teams, like the CSGO team, when they left, they're all very they spoke very highly of the org and said, we tried everything to make it happen, we just couldn't. Like, that's Valorant, I feel like we've heard similar things. So I think it feels like that's part of the broader org culture, but certainly something that we're seeing a lot right now with the league side too.
Yeah. That probably bled into the other esports too. I mean, something that we've talked about is having like an adult in the room.
Yeah.
And I think like I had the sense that he provided that a lot. This is so the next paragraph, the next little section is where it got, really interesting for a lot of people's discussion of this. So I think we'll spend a lot of time kind of breaking this thought down. Because he said, after multiple rounds of talks with management before Worlds, it was clear that the shared vision of the kind of League of Legends program we wanted to build together in 2019 no longer fit the goals and aspirations of 100T for 2023. So taken literally, right? It is they decided on a game plan in 2019 when they brought PapaSmithy on. And that goal, that game plan had a set of goals, a set of like, we're gonna do this kind of process, we're gonna spend these kind of resources, we're going to make these kind of choices, right? We're gonna have these kind of values. And he's saying now the vision for 2023 and beyond from 100 Thieves does not align totally with the 2019 version of that vision where they came together and built that, together. Like when you hire a GM, you want to know what are your objectives, what are you going to do, what are you going to be about? And
Right.
if that suits what you're going for, then you say, let's go, let's sign the contract, let's do it. So now, presumably, from this wording, PapaSmithy hasn't really changed what he wants to accomplish and what he thinks should be done. But that 100 Thieves idea of how to accomplish these goals has changed from 2019. I don't think that's a totally outrageous thing at face value anyway. Like, of course, you're going to make changes and decisions and stuff. Like, it's been years. It's been 3 years. That's more than half the life of the org, So things are going to change of that span of time. It's just how far away from the original vision does it stray, and what does that mean?
Yeah. I think that the thing that catches my interest in that is, I mean, they're actually very clear about that. If you think back to when Papa joined and the videos they did and the way the things they talked about and like the goals that they stated, um, if those goals aren't the goals anymore, there are a couple questions I have. One of them is, what are the new goals, and when should we expect to hear that? I mean, I don't expect that would have been out today, right? It's like, yeah, that takes time. You got to wait for that to come out, and probably it will be as they announce other things and rosters, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But the other is, what parts of the vision specifically, right? So you have to imagine that Papa said, I got an idea for this thing called 100 Next, right? Like you don't have it today, but I think it'd be cool to do and a good investment of our resources. So is that something like what pieces of what he was about are we no longer feeling like as an org we are willing or able to commit to? Um, and we don't know that. That's not part of the message here. I think that's to be expected.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are things that you worry about, right? Like I think you really hope that the pipeline is not going to be put into doubt. You hope that their commitment to building a championship roster is still, part of the ambition here. Maybe it's just that they had different ways about what that means in 2023. I don't know, but that's those are the questions I have hearing that.
Yeah. I think like one of the obvious things to talk about here, and I think we'll mention it and then have a longer conversation elsewhere, but is money and resources. Because if you think back to what happened when we first started with Chris, with PapaSmithy, we had just presumably spent a ton of money bringing in Bang to the roster, and it had completely fallen flat. We had some other players that were presumably not cheap either. There was a lot of investment, and then when PapaSmithy came on, we slow pedaled things at first. Now I remember wondering, is this because we couldn't get the right people? Like we couldn't find the right players Or was it we didn't want to spend on the right players? And that was kind of a question mark. We didn't have an answer to that.
Mhm.
What we did have is, a player like Ryoma, who came in as a transition player who filled a gap for a while, right? Um, we had some other players come and go, and it seemed like we just were a few moves away from getting to a place where we could spend the money, and then we certainly did, right?
Right.
On the backs of that, though, you were also, like you said, building infrastructure in underneath it, right? Where 100 Next is the thing. The academy team, we actually poured in a lot of resources to that. So it seems like my guess is that the resources available was a big part of that vision. Um,
Mhm.
I think 100 Thieves back then, there was less of a pressure for profitability. Things just felt a little different, right? It was kind of like we would spend some money on some cool things just because it was cool, like, and just because we liked it and wanted to do it and we were passionate.
Well, I mean, I think
The
early
reins
on,
were a
right,
little looser for that, probably.
you think about, like, the first few years of any program, right? Like, I don't think anybody expects that in year 1, like, we're gonna spend X million of dollars,
Yeah.
and we're gonna double our investment after a year,
Yeah.
It's like, you're lying, that's not right. Um, so, there comes a time where you have to just evaluate, is this still what we thought would happen 3 years ago? Where are we at, right? Like, you can make these investments now. Maybe part of your investment was, if we do these things, I think we can win a title. Great. Surely there are financial rewards for that, right? Um, maybe there aren't. You know? Like,
Maybe there aren't as
maybe
much.
yeah, maybe it doesn't really make that much of a difference, on the balance sheet if you have a title or not, right? Um, so, like, I think you have to revisit all of those assumptions at some point. This point feels like a pretty good time to do that. And if you can no longer justify the millions of dollars that you're spending on this program, what else do you have to do? Like, what you have very limited options then, other than finding a way to do this spending less. You think about, like, the heist, right? I mean, that was a significant financial investment. Um, all of the players, all of the staff. So, all of these things that we have been spending a lot on over time, like, we had multiple coaches for 3 different programs, basically.
Yeah.
And that's not cheap. That's not cheap at all. Like, these people are earning a living wage, plus benefits. And I assume, I don't actually know what people are earning, but you'd hope that they're getting enough to make this worthwhile for their commitment. I'm sure that the org is doing them right. Um, that's expensive, man. People are super expensive to employ.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can overlook the fact that, like, you got to make these hard decisions if what you're not going to do is continue to run at a loss. And I sincerely doubt, like, there's a reason that Paid by Steve is a meme, and it's because there's no business model where this makes sense. This is Steve deciding that he would like to have a great League of Legends program and making decisions based on that, right? Um, and so, like, that doesn't work for everybody, and it probably doesn't work for Steve endlessly either. I'm sure he's at some point gonna need to do the same thing.
Yeah. And this is really what you're saying is really insightful beyond just the money piece. Like, because it's easy to be like, oh, well, look, how you can't always just spend a ton of money. But what you're saying is like, you know, yes, you can't always spend the money, but also they did. And what was the result? Like, what were our expectations versus what we actually achieved? I think that's an important thing. So let's talk about
Mhm.
that. And then I think let's
Yeah.
dive further into the economic situation. Because, to me, that is from
Yep.
the stuff we have available to us, that seems like, a huge reason. If you back up, like what you were saying, look at the objectives of that 2019 vision.
Yeah.
If you're like, okay, you mentioned winning a title. Maybe if we play our cards right and like this process goes well, we win a title. Okay, we obviously did that, right? And not
Yeah.
only that, but we made 2 other finals, so 3 finals in a row. One of them which we won, right? And we went to Worlds twice. That's a big check mark, right?
Mhm.
For the plan. What else is part of that plan? Developmental talent, right? Safe to say, safe to say that has gone well for us too.
Yep.
Clearly, we have one of the most, if not the most productive academy and amateur programs out there. I think on a whole, it's basically us and Team Liquid. I would probably give the edge to us, honestly, in terms of like amateur all the way up.
But what about Danny?
That's true. What about Danny? There was that one player, but you know what I mean? Like it's the guys that brought up, he mentioned 14 players played, excuse me, played in the LCS from 100 Thieves Academy, right? 15 players from the amateur program made it to Academy. That's insane success. That is really, really crazy. And along with that came kind of a halo effect for us because especially that first 100 Next team. Do you remember this? Like everybody was all about 100 Next. That's gotta be like the most like well-known amateur team ever from our side of amateur, right? Like everybody knew 100 Next and the players on it, and it was fun, and there was so much bubbling up around it. I mean, even the current Academy broadcast team, they kind of like came up simultaneously with 100 Next guys, and so much of it was about that. I think it was like an awesome look for the org, right? And it was, you know, clearly we were gaining respect on that front. So the developmental part of it, I think, is largely a success. Now, it is true that the thing we didn't do when it came to development is convert those into starting players for us. Right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes into that. Like, hey, guess what? Someday actually happens right now to be popping off like, you know, his best year ever. So we did all that work prepping Tenacity, and now it's like, do you really want to throw Someday off his rhythm? And guess what? That was the right choice. Okay, because Someday did well all year for us.
Yep.
So, you know, when you see Someday chopping Doran into pieces on the Aatrox at Worlds, you know, that might not have happened if we decided to go Tenacity. So there's that
choice.
So some of that could be just victim of the time frame. Also, it's like it takes a long time to get them up there, and we're only talking about a 3-year period. Talent wise, we were stacked at the positions where we had our most promising talent, and that's kind of like, I don't know. I don't hold that against PapaSmithy or whoever's, you know, working on these things, because like you just find talent wherever it is. You know what I mean? It doesn't really like, you know, I'm like, well, we don't want General Sniper because we already have a top laner and a second top laner. It's like, no, get them into the fold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like Kenvi, you know, it's like, okay, cool. Like, and honestly, like, I think most people feel like Busio's turn is next, like this upcoming season. Like before this, like everybody's basically like, yeah, Busio's probably going to get the nod. So I think like the converting them to LCS players is a little bit of a fluke that it hadn't happened. It's like kind of like spoiled for talent, which just means your development process is going very well. So you check that box. You check the culture box, I think it's safe to say, because, you know, as we mentioned, everybody has a high opinion of the org itself, like who's worked there and who's been on the rosters and stuff. It's like, you know, there's a lot of respect for 100T in that sense. Maybe one of the things that didn't really like click the way that we might have hoped is like fan base stuff, you know, like I don't think it feels like 100 Thieves has like gained many fans during this stretch. I think that's the case for like literally everyone but EG, and those EG fans were just bandwagon fans. So it's again, I'm like, it's hard to really hold that there. And plus it's like, I don't know how much of that is the responsibility of someone like a GM. Surely there's a portion of that, like you build around players, right? You hire the right players. We signed Meteos in year 1. That was clearly like the smartest signing we made for the beginning, because he brought with him like a crazy fan base of loyal people. So, you know, there are those things that go into it, but I don't know. It just seems like when you look at what could have been the vision, things have gone pretty dang well, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, all right, we achieved most of what we set out to do. And now what has the payout been? So it's like if we didn't like continue building fans at the same amount like that we were in 2018. Okay? Maybe that was unsustainable. Maybe it was because we didn't have like the content side like we could have. I don't know. But there is that. You mentioned maybe it doesn't pay to win,
Yeah.
right? There's prize money involved, but you know the spending required to get there is certainly offsetting that. Like I don't think anyone looks at our league programs like, hey, they are definitely in the black.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, So you look at the ancillary revenue, right? Like sponsorship, partnerships. What happens there? Not a whole lot. It kind of just held where it was for the most part, right? And
Yeah.
we don't know what the money is like on these deals, but when you say like when you have like a feel for what has happened, it feels like there's less of a sponsorship presence, and that's probably because there are less sponsors buying in for content. You know, that's probably a major reason why we don't get much of it. So a lot of this, I think, it's like, yeah, well, we thought doing all these things and winning would land us in a place where, hey, we are building, things are going really well on the esports side, and it's starting to like, you know, build a flywheel for us that's just going to continue to push us forward. And I don't think that was the reality, and I don't think that's the fault of, you know, the program, right?
Yeah. No. I don't want to go too macro here, but like, why does any of this exist? Right.
Right.
Why did um is it Dan Gilbert?
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting the name right? Yeah.
Yep.
Why did he invest money? Um, he didn't do it because he thought it'd be cool to win an LCS title. I promise you that. He doesn't know what that is. He doesn't care. He might now, to his credit. At the time, this was not him seeking somebody out to say, like, yo, I want to get a banner. Give me that trophy, boys. I got to
Dan
get it.
Gilbert wants an LCS title.
He wants it and he's coming for it. Look out. He wants a lot of money for his investment. He would like to earn a lot of money for the money that he's putting into this thing, right?
I just thought you were just say he wants a lot of money.
He
And
does.
just leave it there. Which is true.
He does. He's looking for a good investment. To the team's credit, they convinced him this was a good investment. And I'm not putting that into question. I think this is still like, if you're going to get in with an org, I think this 100 Thieves, you're feeling good about where things are at, right?
Yeah.
It's healthy. There are other orgs you can look at that aren't. I won't name them. Like there are teams that Dan Gilbert didn't invest in, even though I'm sure he had that opportunity. All of that to say, people want to get in on this because they feel like it's the future, right? Like you make a big investment in this 5 years ago because you think that it's going somewhere. And this is a little bit of, I think, what I'm concerned about, which is it seems to be going not nowhere. It's not nowhere. It seems to be going backwards,
Yeah.
right? Like the LCS is not even going to have a primetime slot. It's being cannibalized by the people who make it, right? Like they are making way for the thing they think is actually a better bet.
The new favorite kid.
So are you going to continue to dump money, Dan Gilbert's money, into the LCS when Riot is like, yeah, guys, I think you're going to like this. Wednesday is where it's at, you know? So, you know, like big picture, I think that as an org, you have to try to make a decision about what you want to do for the next 3 to 4 years, starting right now today.
Yeah.
And if your bet is to continue to dump a lot of money into League of Legends, I can't tell you with a lot of confidence that a move away from weekend scheduling is going to do favors for the viewership. I can't say that. It seems unlikely to me. So like that's a concern. And there's other things to look at
Well,
too, where it's like, where do we think this is probably going?
yeah,
I,
and let's back up and talk about this a little more, because I think there are some things aligning here that make this a more palatable, you know, situation for us.
yeah,
And I think it starts with what you're mentioning with like the speculative nature of the scene, right? So
yeah,
just so you guys know, like before my current job, I worked in the music business, and I worked at an association for people who like put on live events and tours and stuff, right? We have an annual conference where we have to like design these panels of like, all right, we're gonna have a conversation about this and that, and bring in all these people to, you know, talk about the next hottest thing in entertainment. And I think it was 2015. League of Legends came across my desk like as a thing. It was like, look, it was
3 years
I
before you
still
started
remember
watching
the
League.
photos. Yeah, this is way before I started watching. I remember the photos, and it was like, this is e-gaming. And it was like photos of worlds with like red side, blue side lighting and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
everything, and
I know
like
the
a
exact
full
photo that they
stadium,
included.
right?
Yep.
And they were like, Jordan, did you know more people watch the League of Legends World Championship than the Super Bowl? And that stat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Was on like literally every pitch deck ever for like 3
Yeah.
years straight, right?
Right.
And I remember seeing this and be like, huh, this is kind of interesting. And then it had a moment being like a thing for people to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Like we brought in Peter Melkin from Major League Gaming, like for a panel, and it was like, I don't even really know what we're doing with this.
Yeah.
And I was a video game fan, by the way.
Yeah.
So everybody got super excited about that. And I think like there was this huge expectation that since games were so popular, and since, you know, obviously video games were like where more and more people were spending their time, and that's what the youths are into, it was, you got to get in on it now, and you better buy those franchise spots now, because you see what's happening in the NFL, you see what's happening in the NBA. Those valuations are about to skyrocket. If you don't get into the ground floor, oh buddy, you're gonna be paying 10x markup on these things, right?
Yeah.
So and all those people who were investing had a crazy amount of money. Like there was a surplus of available investment capital during this time. So it was just like, yeah, you know, why not? And it was like lots of sports owners, right, who were again seeing their valuations blow up. They're like, well, you know, if everybody wants to play video game basketball instead of real basketball in 20 years, then it makes sense for me, owner of the Houston Rockets, to start Clutch Gaming. Let's go. You know, so there's like all that stuff, right? Where there's just like this speculative nature of it. Tons of money, which made all these things possible, you know, and it was spending that was not justified beyond cool and speculative.
Right. Like
so
something else recently that came up. I can't scratch my head on that.
Shush. So one of the effects of this, right, was like 100 Thieves probably in a weird way kind of contributed to this, because when they entered in 2018, it was like, it went so well. It went so well. It was like, look at this new brand. They're exciting. They're cool. They actually have some potential to like cross over into the mainstream, because like, look at their board, look at their investor. Did you know Drake is a part owner in this? That means Drake's going to be wearing 100 Thieves apparel every time he's on camera, you know, stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, okay, cool. This is like going to pop off. Like I said, lots of fans, the content, right? 100 Thieves, best content team ever assembled. Everything was insane during that time. And so it was like, okay, cool. Look how this is going for them. More of that. Right. And then all of that money that was invested in the teams was, you know, it started to be spent, you know, and player salaries, program budgets just shot up. And we knew this. Everybody knew this, right? This was openly talked about. I mean, Jordan and I, we're not esports insiders. We don't know anything about this, honestly, right? But everybody knows that you don't need to pay $6 million for perks or whatever, right? Like That just does not make sense. It's not justified. And if you win,
We beat him.
we
We beat him.
it's it's like it's cool, it's exciting, but like not sustainable. And every offseason, the bids on the players just got crazy, especially because NA was at a disadvantaged position when it came to attracting the best players. And we have the most money. Shouldn't we have the best players? Aren't we a major region? We're a mid-tier region, but aren't we a major region? You know? So all of that stuff got crazy out of control. So you look at like the capital layout that, you know, whoever these investors are making. You see companies like 100 Thieves, like TSM, right? Re-raising rounds, you know, and just getting like injections of cash. And then like, you know, fast forward a bit, we're not seeing the improvement. We're not seeing the progress in the scene. It's not exploding. You're not starting to hear about League of Legends out there in the world. We're still all nerds on Discord all day long. You know what I mean? Your friend at work is not talking about 100 Thieves at the water cooler. That stuff's just not happening, right? So,
although when you find that person, they're cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's a bad example because I have a guy at work, a coworker at work who loves Valorant and likes 100 Thieves, and I gave him his first juvie today. So, anyway,
that still sounds like sort of a punishment.
It sounds like a euphemism or something.
I gave him a juvie.
Ooh, maybe I should not have said that. Anyway, so you factor in like just the amount of cash that has been spent by them, and they're starting to wonder if it's worth it because it's like, this doesn't seem to be working, but maybe we'll give it a bit of time. Right. And then the pandemic hits and everything changes and the economy starts like crashing. And even when like, you know, the beginning of the pandemic, the economy was like still looking strong or whatever, but it was like, you know, people knew it was not going to last.
Yeah. And like, oh, this is going to be bad.
People lost so much money, right? And if you are a leveraged investor, you're just losing more money than the average person, right? So I think, yeah, I said this a long time ago on the pod, actually. My thought of what happens is that, you know, the people on the board, like these board officers and stuff, they're going to be like, hey, so we've lost a ton of money, like on all of our businesses. This is not just a you thing, but we definitely have to tighten the budgets here. We do not have more money available for you. You need to figure this out because we cannot afford to spend any more money on this. And we have to see return on the things that we are spending money for. You know what I mean? So you're going to be more accountable for results now than sometime in the future.
I mean, that when they gave us the money, they said at some time in the future, we're going to want to see how this is going. We are there now. This is sometime in the future. You know, there's more future to look at, but like we're out of the phase of like, we have this idea that we want to talk to you about, you know, now it's like, well, let me have a look at your books, you know?
You're right.
Oh, okay. It's interesting. That's an interesting line.
Yeah.
League of Legends. I've not heard of that. Is that like football?
I wonder how many people watch that compared to, say, the Super Bowl. But
well, let me tell you, actually.
Yeah.
So, when they pull up the stream for LCS
from 2014, 2015, they pull up that like, oh, this is old. Let me look at what it is now. Anyway, so I strongly think this happened to 100 Thieves, and I would guess other orgs too. I mean, like I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume that all of these things were tightened up. We saw layoffs from the content team, social team. We've seen a scale back in resources, right? This doesn't seem to be like for no reason, right? It's because now we have to measure the performance of what we're spending our money on a little more carefully and a little more purposefully than before. And all orgs are in the same boat with that, right? Mm-hmm. And now because of the economic situation, it's like the esports speculation bubble is pretty much popped. Okay. It's not going to go away. Certainly it's not going to go away, but it's just like, it's not that there's not that excitement and that juice in it that there was like 5 years ago. So
Well, even the way they're doing franchising or partnership in Valorant, they're giving teams money
yeah.
versus how much do they pay for the
Hmm.
the franchise slots, and like that says a lot about where
Right.
we've how far we've
Exactly.
come. They're now incentivizing people to try to spend and develop this space instead of essentially, uh, you know, charging admission.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing, like bringing this back to the current predicament, right? Because we got talking about this because of the PapaSmithy move.
Mhm.
We don't know for sure that this is a money decision, and it could not be. It could be for other reasons or whatever. I strongly suspect money is a huge factor in this decision, though, because look how the performance went this year. We didn't get better. We weren't able to make a dent in worlds. Basically, nobody in NA. This is not just a us
Yep.
problem. Um, and now it's time for like, okay, we clearly need to rebuild. It just so happens that that happens right when this bubble burst is happening, right? All season we've heard, you know, these teams aren't going to keep spending this money. This was a big year for Team Liquid.
Yeah.
Them not making Worlds is a huge deal because of all the investors who thought, this was the crowning moment for North American esports, and all the eyeballs are going to be on them. And, as unfounded as those ideas may have been, it appears that some things were built on top of them. And so you hear, like, it's again not a unique to 100 Thieves thing. It's just people are pulling out largely.
Mhm.
So, what a convenient time for that to happen, because we need a program change at the same time, and we kind of have this like this other stuff happening. So if you imagine, say like the ecosystem was pretty healthy right now and we were still getting like the same result,
Mhm.
it's kind of like, oh man, what do? We got to spend more money.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we kind of have cover, right, for this.
Yeah.
We kind of have a cover and a reason.
It's
So
interesting. One I want to mention one point on the like, hey, this is NA's year, right? Like, there were a lot of people cheering for us when we were almost, when we were toe to toe with RNG. I think more than we've had anyone cheer for 100 Thieves League of Legends ever, I'd
yeah.
say. So, can you imagine if we showed up and we pulled a rogue, right? And we went 3-0 the first week. I mean, there would have been an incredible amount of buzz and support for us going into the second round robin.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that, like, I kind of dismissed that at first. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, my mom's not going to know about, even if we 6-0 groups. Like, this is not. But like, there was a chance there to actually connect with more people, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Or at the very least, like, to do some of that fan building. Like, I think that's kind of what happened with EG, right? Where it's like nobody
Mm-hmm.
expects these guys to do well, and they are popping off. And I am now rooting for them because this is exciting, right? And I can't believe what I just saw. I didn't even know who this kid was, but I'm going to root for him. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a moment. I don't think it would have like fixed what ails us.
Yeah.
Um,
Because that's the thing. It's like, yes, connect with some more fans. And now I'm looking for the line on the spreadsheet where I see how many more hoodies I sold because I connected with the
right.
audience.
Or just like raising the overall, um, it's hard, right? Because it's like, look, having more fans is good and important.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think there's some way that you have to try to quantify the value of that without directly translating it to like views or clicks or purchases or
Yeah.
juvies, right? Um, and I want to believe that there's something there. It's like you need the pedigree too. I feel like they talked about this before, right? Where it's like we want to be a championship organization, not just one that makes the best apparel or the one that has good content, but like also one that wins. And so I do think there's value in having like having a fan base, even if their only engagement with the team is on Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah. So that's a tough nut to crack, right? I think like I've always thought is really interesting what after what was it like 2 years or so when 100 Thieves stopped endorsing the supreme of esports kind of idea, right? You remember how
Mhm.
like that was a comparison for us like all the time,
Yeah.
and they stopped kind of doing that. They stopped kind of thinking of themselves as streetwear. They've dropped that term from all their marketing.
Mhm.
And then it's like gaming lifestyle organization, stuff like that. I think like the Supreme like comparison is so interesting to me because Supreme was such like a slow build over a really long period of time, and it was done by being really true to the culture.
Right.
To this day, you see like the Supreme apparel reveals every week before the Thursday drops. They're skate videos. They're skate videos of people wearing the stuff and like authentic skateboarding in like New York City, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's how they do it, and they've done it for a very long time, and that soul to it is still there. And like Supreme's like white hot days are still behind them, but they're never going away. They're still like super respected. They're only red hot now and not white hot.
Right.
Um, and I think like there's something to be said about like sticking with that culture and like doing things with values in your heart and everything.
Mhm.
And I think that's how 100 Thieves operated for a really, really long time. And it's not to say that's totally gone because it's not. But I think there's more credence given to financial considerations now because they are a company and they need to become profitable. They need to sustain their employees and their business, right? There are people who work super hard at that company. They need to be paid. The investors want to see return, like you mentioned. So it's like this transition for 100 Thieves was going to happen anyway,
Mhm.
regardless of like, whether or not we just happen to find ourselves in an economic like situation, predicament,
Right. Right.
So it's just kind of convenient that it's happening now, but unfortunately that means there's collateral damage along the way, with
Mhm.
things like we're not going to spend class A resources, tier 1 resources
Hmm.
on our League of
Major
Legends program,
region
which
resources.
seems to be the case. Look, they could totally surprise us, in a couple weeks and announce that they've got like $3 million roster. I think there's like a 0.0001% chance of that. So I'm just saying we don't know this definitively, but it sure seems that way. We have seen less content. We've seen less staff around the program. We've seen less excitement, less attention drawn to it, less coverage, gradually over time. I think the signs have been here for a while, and we've been talking about that. And
Mhm.
to me, to tie this all into the reason we're talking about it, um, it's hard to look back at the PapaSmithy tenure and be like, yeah, this isn't a financial decision because we achieved so many of the things we wanted to achieve along the way.
Mhm.
I think it's just like the results weren't, even though like we achieved the goals we set, the revenue maybe didn't follow it. We didn't get as much added sponsor attention. We didn't get as much um, streaming money or whatever it is, attention to all their other channels, everything. So it's kind of hard to look at it and think that that's not one of the major drivers to it or the major driver to it.
Yeah.
We'll never ever know this because 100 Thieves is notoriously like gonna play this tight-lipped. Like that's just how they do it. They don't give a lot of information usually about things like this. They take, the the quiet road and the high road as much as they possibly can. I would be shocked if, they were to come out and say stuff like that. So that's just for us to sit and think about. But the facts are now we're going to have to restart this program and there will be choices made on what the direction is moving forward, right? Like, will this be some people seem to think that this our vision not aligning right from 2019 to 2023 means we're going to go away from the development stuff we've generated and buy like Bjergsen or whatever. I don't think that's the case. But we
Not
have
unless
other
it's
choices.
budget Bjergsen, like
Budget Bjergsen. Great
if
value
he
Bjergsen.
yes. Every time you say great value, it makes me laugh so hard. I just can't. It's so good. It would still be Bjergsen.
Yeah.
Just like him having the same internal monologue that we've been having with each other, where he then realizes, like, I guess I just got a pay cut.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh in the middle of that, but Squiz in chat just said, so Demonte again?
Yo.
So we shall see what happens. One of the other choices we have to make is like, okay, if we rebuild the roster, because I'm assuming that PapaSmithy isn't the only change that's going to happen. I would not be surprised if Reaper did not work for what was it a split or a full year before we hired him? There was a period of time where he didn't work, probably just a split.
Yeah.
It is probably pretty likely that he was asking for a lot of money. He was a very desired coach. He probably commanded prepay. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not there going forward. Some of the guys on our team, like, I don't know what it's going to be, but since I believe that money's a huge factor here, I'm not going to be shocked if we lose so much of that. So rebuilding the roster process, it's like, hey, do we put in those prospects that we've been developing? Do we bump Busio up? Do we put Tenacity in, right? And beyond that, do we say shun the idea of importing and stick to NA people, right? Like, hey, one of the biggest criticisms of 100 Thieves is 100 imports, right?
Yep.
This is a team of 5 imports, blah, 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 blah. Most obnoxious people on the planet, but there's at least something to what they're saying, right? And clearly the league community seems to only root for you if you have NA talent on your roster. So that's an opportunity. It's like, we're going to make choices on this, presumably. Do we go heavily NA? Do we go heavily young? And like, what do we do? And I don't know what the answer to the questions are, but those are choices that 100 Thieves is going to make. And whatever direction it goes in, it's going to be a wild ride. There's going to be a lot to talk about on the podcast every week, right?
Yes. Yeah, we won't. Yeah, we'll have to figure out how we do a podcast when our games are in the middle of the week. But that's a separate issue. But we'll have plenty to talk about. I got to come back to one point you made, which is it's the 0.0001% chance that we swing for the fences with our roster. I just think, for me, it feels that I don't know what the argument is to do that, right? The reason
to do which part of it?
Invest, buy as many important imports or expensive imports as you can.
The bag again.
Yeah, just keep throwing the bag, even though it's just full of IOUs and loans. So here, for me, this is the reason you don't do that, right? This is NA's thing. We spend big money, right? We spend big money because we feel like it gives us a chance to be globally relevant. It's our one shot at actually competing at Worlds, is to bring in the best players, have good enough NA talent to make it up there, and to get to, it's kind of like we want to be not only an afterthought for groups or like the easy group, but we want other teams to fear playing against us, right? That's not happening. That's not happening with anything close to. And you can point to the exception, right? The C9s, the team, the CLGs, the ones who have made big splashes. That is the exception. That is in no way an actual strategy to make it to become relevant on the global stage. And if you're going to spend that kind of money, you need the LCK to be talking about you at groups draw, and not because it's like, so we're not worried about them. This is going to be a cakewalk. We're feeling pretty good about this. Without that, I just don't think you can justify it. Like, how can you? the only way you can get a return on that kind of investment is if you become. It's kind of like, there are orgs like Fnatic and G2. I think they're probably maybe one thing you could look at to say, like, they have global relevance in part because they've been good enough to actually compete historically. If you're going to spend, you need to basically be that good. And I just don't see that happening for NA. And even if it could happen, I don't think it's anything close to reliable enough to justify on your balance sheet that you're going to spend millions of dollars to finish 1-5. Like,
Right.
that's just, there's no return there. If anything, it degrades your brand because you show up and you look like the mid-your
Mid-year
mid-your
region.
region,
Yep.
which is harder to say than you think.
But no less true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just more reason in my book to, think that we're not going that direction. We're going to go young and cheap.
Yep.
But that doesn't necessarily have to be like such a bleak outlook. For one, all the other NA teams seem to be doing the same thing, right? Like that's kind of what the whisperings are. So if everybody kind of reduces their budgets and stuff, then it's like, the playing field will still be relatively level, except for, whoever is still spending like a metric butt ton of money on the roster, because I've, heard that there are one or two teams that still will. But we may get a chance to see what the development process really yields if with our new guys, So there's it's like things are just going to be different. It's not
Yep.
it's not necessarily going to like feel way worse in terms of the competition, probably until we get to Worlds. Then at that point, like, okay, this sucks. But watching NA week to week, there'll still be lots of storylines, and there's an opportunity for refreshing the reputation, not the reputation, but the connotations of 100 Thieves, like what people think about when they think 100 Thieves.
Mhm.
There's a chance to refresh those things, and all teams are going to be going through crazy growing pains. So, one thing we don't know is what other staff are staying behind.
Mhm.
There could be more staff leaving, more players leaving. We don't know who's going to still be there, but if we have a lot of the same staff, especially that has helped build this program, it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to abandon development, right? That was one of the things I had the hardest time understanding on Twitter, reading people's thoughts on this, was like a lot of people assumed we're just abandoning the development because PapaSmithy's not there. It's like, well, I don't think we have another real route forward here. I don't think we're going to be abandoning that. And if some of the other staff stays behind, then we can continue a lot of those same processes. And maybe that will become clear when they hire a new GM and we get to find out who that is. But it's going to be really interesting. Doesn't have to be all doom and gloom, but I think the reason we're all feeling that way is because clearly PapaSmithy meant a lot to all of us, because he brought us from darkness into championship mode, and we should feel sad about that. Like, we should feel grateful and sad to lose it, and this like sense of change, which is like, oh man, like I'm gonna miss these guys if the roster goes, and I'm gonna miss PapaSmithy. All that is valid and cool, and we should be feeling that. And then we'll just see what the next direction is, but let's not make up our minds before it happens.
Yeah, I want to make that very, very clear. I don't actually feel doom and gloom about this at all. Like, I think everything we've talked about is just how I understand the current moment in both LCS and 100 Thieves, and specifically as they relate to one another. It hurts to realize that we aren't the new NFL, right? Like, it would be very cool and exciting if we had, football money. Like, what on earth would this thing look like then? It's fun to think about it, but it's not happening. It's not there. And it might never. Like, maybe all of the speculation never plays out, and we still have a game that we both like to watch and talk to each other about once a week. Cool. Like, I'm not mad about that at all. The reason I don't feel doom and gloom about this is because this is the reality, and I actually think the worst position you could be in right now is clinging to the way you want things to be, right? Like, I would actually, given all that we've talked about, I would be more concerned if it was like, guess we just got to try to get Showmaker again. I don't know who else could we try for? Who's taking our calls still? Um, it's like that's just not it. One, it's not going to work. Two, I don't think it's actually that exciting or fun to watch. To be honest, like the perks thing, like when we made these huge purchases, our best team and the one that we are kind of remembering fondly didn't have that, right? It was Someday and the Golden Guardians guys. And it turns out that they were awesome,
Yeah.
right? And none of them were an import from the LPL or LCK, like that the year before. So what I hope is, and this is why I'm actually more hopeful than not right now, is that we have the foresight to see that we got to do things differently. And yeah, it's probably going to be painful because we've all been enjoying this, this lush, luxurious lifestyle of, import League of Legends. I think the first team to do this right is going to be better positioned down the line. There's a lot of stuff we got to get right along the way. Like, I think we have to make it, like, we have to basically be the best at doing it this way. That's the opportunity, because otherwise you're going to look like you're just, you're trying to get out of League, or
Yeah.
you're not you don't care about it anymore. I think there's a lot of cool storylines to tell about what this program is now. We just have to wait and see what that story is, because the only piece we have is we know that it's not going to be PapaSmithy who's rebuilding this thing. And that's a bummer, because I think he's awesome, and I would like to listen to that story from him, but he's not going to be the one to tell it. I mentioned this like the first few minutes we were talking. I actually think that announcing the GM's departure before you start rebuilding a team is the right order to do this in, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to go through a rebuild and start announcing things
Yeah,
and then
it's
have somebody else come in and say, "Oh, we realized halfway through rebuilding our program that we want this other guy to do it." Like, okay, yeah, you just realized that. So I think this is the first thing to be announced, with good reason, and now we just have to kind of wait and see. But
yeah.
everything we've said is just where we expect this to go.
Mhm.
And I do hope that we can be the best at everybody who's doing it this way,
Yeah.
and that the other orgs can maintain solvency through the whatever's to come, because that's a question mark for me.
Yeah, and someone reacting to what you said about, having the chance to do that, someone said EG did that already in chat. And it's like, well, kind of. I mean, EG, like, yeah, they put Jojo and Danny in because they weren't as good as us at the time, so they kind of had to make their change. And those were big bets, and good for them for making them, but their hands were forced a little bit at least. So we could end up in the same position where we put in our guys, and hey, guess what? Buzio is the next legend of the LCS. That could very well happen. And we could put more young developmental talent around them and kind of out EG. Because honestly, like, our development pipeline should be respected as much or more than that. I feel really strongly about that.
Right.
No shade on any EG people, but yeah, it's just like, I don't want that to come off as a slight to Under Thieves, because we've done that too. Our team was just really good, so we didn't rotate them in. Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
it could, there could be surprising results there. Now, with all of that said, is Cosmic Flash just finding out in chat the news from today? With all that being said, we do have to go through listener takes, and I want to give them some respect this week, even though we're an hour and 15 deep into the pod. This is a huge week. And I will say also, at a future episode, like in the not too distant future, we'll talk more specifically about roster and like, what we would do and how we think everything went with these guys and who should be replaced. And maybe if we have the money, who should stay, that kind of thing. We'll do that at a future pod. But for right now, let's run through listener questions it takes. Starting off with Robin, who says, I think it's just a sacrifice to play in on the curse. If LCS does bad every week, then Valorant will pop off.
There you go.
We didn't mention this piece when we were talking about investment and everything, but it's like, it seems to me, judging from the content and roster and everything, that like, okay, 100 Thieves is choosing Valorant as like the favorite child right now. And I think that's fine. Valorant is an exciting newer thing and has good potential. Like I said, Riot,
$1 million.
yeah, they're getting like $1 million a year from Riot or whatever it is. So it's like, it's a pretty good proposition there.
That helps.
That does help. So I love this. I love this though. It's like the who do we name this after? Was it like Real Connection or whoever it was that brought this up?
Yeah.
It's just like, the 100 Thieves esport could be good at a time thing.
Yeah.
Love it.
The championship energy or the aura. The championship aura, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Big C, that's me, said this in chat, but I dumped it into the listener takes because I thought it was something to talk about. Maybe we already addressed it. So a lot of these things we will have already talked about. Big C, that's me, said, could the fact that so much homegrown talent became somewhat successful for other orgs be a reason why they might go, go in a different direction? I could see management saying, why are we investing in making our competitors better? I think that's an interesting consideration because it's like what has happened with the talent that we've developed. But again, I just believe that like we weren't in a position to pull the trigger knowing we would have upgrades, and now we kind of are. So I think we will convert on one or two of these guys in this upcoming season. So I don't think this is like a factor in the management decision, personally.
Yeah, and I think actually PapaSmithy maybe said this in our chat once, but he basically said, we always play the best player at the position, right? So it's like you keep that pipeline going, you get as much great talent as you can, because if you have somebody who is better than your current player, you play them, and then you're a better team, right? Assuming that they play as well with the team as the other guy. If they don't, then you send them to your opponents, and guess what? Your guy's better than them. So works out. That's short term. You got to think about long term too. But like, it's a complex algorithm that you have to do there. Like, do we think this person is going to be better than someday in 2 months? Or like, is someday going to continue to play at the peak of his career for the next year and a half? How are we feeling? So they're trust that they're smarter than the example I just gave, but it's basically that, right? Like, I don't think you really worry about giving other people good players, because if you feel genuinely like they're good enough, you keep them. You can always miss, and that's the risk, but you're also getting the good financial reward for sending them away.
Moving on to Sen, he actually had a take about the games. Did you know we played games this week?
I forgot.
Sen said week 2, meaning Worlds week 2, we looked much better game plan and drafting. No shot anyone can beat Genji's current form. And our mental was weak for the RNG game. I do agree with that. Like, the RNG game is like, it was already like, it was, I'm sorry. It was a sad thing. But we had 2 good showings against RNG. We really did. We had 2 good showings. And that last Genji game, I'm just going to wipe it from memory because at that point we were spent, I did think our drafting was better, even though we did see some things I didn't like. We saw someday Sejuani. It was better than closer Sejuani.
It was. I was going to say.
And then the roster changes needed, but I love the current roster. I'm thankful for them giving us our first LCS title, and amen.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter what happens, no matter how we feel about what should happen with the roster, whether or not we have the money, always will love these guys for that.
Yeah.
Rush GG, he compiled a mini novel for us. This one would probably end up in the young adult fiction section at Barnes and Noble, but we're going to go ahead and read it for Rush because Rush is an OG. I always predicted pretty big changes for our team next year. but never thought it would be Papa going first. He has done so much, not only for LCS, but for the development program. Him saying that goals no longer align for 2023 spells huge changes for 100 LCS, and I'm worried as the general trend has been to pull back on the LCS side of things, content and communication. So I'll just stop at this point because there's a lot more. Yes. Right? Like, so first of all, yes, I didn't expect, if they made this change, I did not expect it to be like so quick and whatever, but I'm not sure if I still feel surprised by this or not, given what I think is the money situation. I guess I'm not, but it does hurt. Anyway, definitely pull back on content and communication about the LCS team, no doubt about that. He continues, yes, we did seem a bit heavy on the support staff. I had the feeling that we would let some coaches go, but never Chris. Not to mention the promising players we have in the 100T ecosystem like Busio and Sniper. With Chris around spearheading the development side of things, I was never really worried if we would see them in the LCS team. The question was always when. So never see them if we would see them, but the question was when we would see them. Now, who knows? Huge L to start things off for the next year. I mentioned this in the Discord. I'm not sure that our chances of things like keeping Sniper are like completely nuked by this. I think Papa's going to have an impact in that equation, but I think we should still be the favorite for stuff like that. And then with what is probably going on with the roster, I think we can expect to see the other guys. So,
and I think the way it works for amateur and academy is that or maybe it's just amateur. You have, I think it must just be amateur because the academy are much more interchangeable with LCS. For amateur, you have basically the ability to match or counter any offer that comes their way, right? Like that's I think the part of the benefit of having them in your system is, you get to be in that conversation. They'll just get snatched up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think really what it's going to come down to, like, I'm sure there will be, like wherever Poppy goes, assuming, because he's mentioned that he might even do broadcast that, right? He just wants to build, which I think is cool.
I think he was implying that he wouldn't do broadcast, right? Or would
he said, I saw a tweet that he said he wouldn't want to just do like be a caster, but more be on the kind of like the
in
building
control,
broadcast.
creative control. Yeah.
Anyhow, I think in large part it probably depends on where our org is when Sniper is able to play at the top level, right? Like he's got to evaluate his options and where we go from here.
By then LCS is going to be looking like the first ABA league or something. There's like 4 teams. And they're playing and they're like janitors during the day and playing League of Legends at night.
Yeah. He'll be our first export to LEC.
Good Burton says PapaSmithy was what totally solidified my support of 100T LCS. Not to be dramatic, but his note about differing visions signifies the beginning of the end of LCS, both for 100T and in general. So I think Good Burton kind of feeling the same pressure about the whole scene that we've been talking about.
Yep.
And then Good Burton asks, how do you think the LCS will look 1, 3, 5 years from now? And what do you think 100T's involvement would be? Maybe implying that he's asking whether we would still have the franchise spot, which I mean, you got to think yes to that.
Yeah, I think so.
That's, that was like the core. That was the vehicle that launched 100 Thieves. Without the LCS team, like we do not really have a company. So, it's hard to see that, especially because the franchise, like, what's it going to sell for? Like, if a franchise sold, like, what would it get? I don't know. I think 100T would probably not sell it, but don't quote me on that.
I think the LCS in 1 year, you still have orgs who are holding on to this dream that you can spend your way to global relevance. I think in 3 years, everybody's back into like reality mode. And my hope is that in 5 years, we are actually competitive through kind of like the new path that people are starting to recognize is the required one. Who knows if that's possible? Like I think there are other hard limiters on that. Player base, that like server limitations, challenges, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's where I think the LCS will
be. Noxwar said 100T had the best drafting out of any of the NA teams, in my opinion. Talking about Worlds. Whatever happens going into the offseason, I hope to see whoever was doing the drafting stay with the org. Now that's probably way up in the air. I think we mentioned this earlier. I think the drafting was better in week 2. And I think, was it Jad or Mark on JLXP today said that they thought we also had the best drafting out of the NA teams. So not that you can rely on them to hold a consistent opinion about anything 100 Thieves related, but I thought we definitely improved and we looked more competitive. It's hard to say how much of that was due to us just playing better or looser and how much of that was draft. But man, when we locked in that Senna Seraphine, I was like, we might actually do something, So it was at least exciting.
I made the mistake of clicking on some Downer League content, and the person was just picking apart our draft against Gen G. I was like, you can't lose draft against Gen G. They could draft literally anything. No,
I was gonna say you lose draft automatically when playing Gen G.
So I was like, this is not this is, they could pick the 5 champions who haven't yet been picked at Worlds and still win. That's fine. So yeah, I think focusing on draft is a little bit goofy for us, NA in general. But glad to hear that people thought we did a good job.
But Nox sure does approve, doesn't he?
Yeah. No, I mean, just like those who say, like, we lost in the draft. It's like, yeah. Sure. Okay. Cool.
Okay. Travis Nifke said closer, who has long been the quote alpha of the team and been the person who helped the team remain aggressive, admitted in his post-game interview he was quote really nervous in groups against RNG and Gen G. Ultimately, this is why they lost. If they play that game against RNG yesterday, even slightly more aggressive, they win. I understand the level of competition, but closer is supposed to be the hyped, overly optimistic leader, and him not being able to bring that to Worlds is a huge part of the downfall. I can't get all the way on board with this because not that I think closer had like the best Worlds or anything, but I felt like he was trying. I felt you could see him trying to make plays. And I think the whole team was kind of discombobulated when it came to macro moves and setting up team fights. So it's hard to point to him as the reason. I get that when we play our best, 100 Thieves at its best makes use of a very aggressive and active closer. That's indisputable, right? And we didn't have that. So there is something to that. So I don't think there's like, this takes completely off in that way, but closer's a dog, man. I'm never gonna doubt that. He's a dog. And so I'm not looking at him. I mean, I thought our bot lane got destroyed the entire time, basically. Yeah. So I would probably, and Abadaga was hit or miss. So I would look 3 other spots on the map before I would point to closer. And I still think he lives up to that personality that he's known for.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, it felt like the first round robin, he was playing more passive picks. And you wonder if that's like the player in draft saying, I don't think this is a good Lee Sin look, right? Or like, I don't think this is a good Viego look for me. Like, how much of this was, and we don't know, and we won't know, how much of it is him saying, like, I don't think this works, versus, like I remember hearing, maybe it was the last time we won, right? But it's just like, draft it and let me play it, right? Remember, like, wasn't there a clip of him saying that basically?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter, just lock it in, kind of thing. Doesn't seem that was. I can't imagine he said that about Poppy. Like,
give me the Poppy, let's go.
Put me on Poppy and watch what happens.
Watch us get exactly that in comms. If we get comms,
we won't. There's no way.
Carl Scale 1 says, did you also feel like you got punched in the chest when reading Sumday's post he made after the games were all done?
I didn't read it.
The answer to that is yes.
The answer is probably yes.
Let me, I'll pull it up for you. Actually, I'm glad this got brought up because this is telling. I think this is telling. If we're talking about like, hey, whether we think the roster is changing, I think this is pretty telling. So let me pull it up here. Well, of course, let me crop a little bit better. So this is Someday. Our World's journey this year for Worlds ends here. Sorry, I don't mean to butcher. You know what I mean? Kind of sad that we couldn't make it out of group, but we tried our best. Still proud of myself and my team. 3 finals, 2 Worlds. I'm not sure what's going to happen to the future, Really thankful for cheering us, 100T fans and someday fans. So he outright says, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future. And also talks about the totality of the roster's achievements.
Yep.
That doesn't sound like someone who's confident the roster is going to come back, right?
Right.
It's like, this is what we achieved during this time, and I'm proud of that. And he should be, by the way. 100 Thieves GOAT someday. So yes, I felt very sad reading that because I was like, uh-oh, roster's done.
Yeah.
Closer, I think, tweeted something very similar to that, if I remember right. Like, also seemed to imply that maybe the roster is not going to continue forward. We'll see. Mont says, sorry, I mean, you'll know why I chuckled right there in a second. Mont says, I can't get over how many skill shots we just miss as a team. Closer misses every poppy ult. True. Who he misses a Mumu Qs. True. I don't know why this is, but we just miss abilities so often. Even some days, Gwen ults always seem to miss. True. So I like. So I was reading that, and then then Darkuth replied to this, and I had to read Darkuth's reply also. He said, "I'll never understand how LCS teams allow players that just miss skill shots. I feel like there has to be pools of players in the USA that won't miss simple skill shots, or play callers that won't miss the calls. I don't know, man. It seems so silly. Would love opinions on this. And if you aren't familiar with this, that is the famous ninja copy pasta about was it NFL kickers? I think is where
NFL kickers missing field goals.
Oh, what an excellent job by Darkuth. I think Mont though. I noticed that too, especially during the Worlds plays. Like, oh, there were a couple times in that last RNG game where it's like, oh, if the bandage lands, maybe we win the whole game. You know what I mean? Like there were, I think there were 2 times from who he was so close and like probably had like an actual impact on how things went. So
the only thing I'll add to that is this world specifically, I've had an enhanced appreciation for how much the enemy team forces misses.
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of like, but it's so rare. There was one where it's just like, that is such a hard skill shot to flash, and the person did it as an afterthought, right? So it's like these guys are so good at not being in this spot where you can land a skill shot, and that's my thought.
Oh, I know. Hey, look at me. I know how to say this guy's last name now because I DM'd him and asked him how to pronounce it. So Chandler Grody, by the way, Grody.
Grody. Yep, Grody.
I'm going to say Grody so it doesn't.
Grody. Okay, yep.
He says, if you, like me, are trying to figure out what happened to this team from summer 21 to now, this is funny because this just came up in chat. TP changes, T1 tower damage changes, and durability changes all affect the playstyle that won us a trophy. I feel like if we could adapt to the meta, okay, but these system changes were brutal. So I give ultimate credit to Jordan, who is the first observer of this phenomenon that I can recall, of how our team was impacted by things like the TP changes. And I think that's part of it. Honestly, it's like bad meta for our bot lane for a while, and TP changes probably contributed to that. I'm not smart enough to really definitively say that, but I also just feels like we just didn't have the juice anymore, right? Like, for whatever reason, the lane just didn't go as well. FBI didn't seem as like hungry to kill everybody as he used to. I mean, the way FBI played like 2021 reminded me of how we watched Ruler play against us, right? And against everybody he's coming in contact with, honestly. It was like, yeah, that dude has a need to kill everyone.
Well, you remember he dumpstered. I can't remember who it was exactly, but in Worlds 21, FBI and who he like took over in the bot lane.
Oh yeah, against Viper and Mako, right?
Yeah. Like they worked them in lane, and that sure wasn't the vibe this time around. Yeah. Those things matter. It's easy to dismiss them and say like, yeah, we get used to it. It's like that was kind of central to our whole play style.
Yeah. Hunter Talk OG Glenn E. Taylor says, what do you hope for in 2023 LCS to improve international results?
Nothing.
I hope for uh I hope for the fact that enough time has passed since the miracle on ice that there's just a sports miracle due to happen and fate smiles upon us.
Right. Yes. That. I'll say that I hope that we are no longer considered a major region.
You think that'll improve international results though?
I think it'll improve the way we talk about it as a group, as a collective.
Honestly, so to answer the question being asked, what do you hope for in 2023 LCS to improve international results? I think the only thing I feel like I can hope for is that teams will lean into, let's not try and emulate the other regions when it comes to the practice schedules and like, our drafting and everything, and let's just find what works for us and play a little more cavalier. I think I think this is a Mark Z point. It might be a Jap point. But like, if you are an undermatched team, the way to win is to get crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, so we got to make that our identity. I think that's the way that LCS does better internationally. So,
and by the way, getting crazy probably gets you a game or two, right?
Yeah.
And then the teams that are just better adapt, right? It's like even that is not a surefire way, but I agree with that point. Like, it is more fun to watch. It is more true to who you are. I kind of said this about like, look, these smaller region teams, us included now, just play your game. Like, don't come in and do what everyone else does worse than them, because that's not a great recipe to win. Like,
Yeah.
play your game. And if you don't win, fine. At least you can go out saying you tried what you do.
Yeah.
Maybe it works.
I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so I apologize to this person in advance. But Jiao Barros says, I'm a PapaSmithy believer. And if he says this was due to differences in the roster construction for 2023, it makes me very worried for the future of 100T League of Legends. I think that concern is shared by so many people right now. I think we all need to be at peace with the idea that like, hey, we're not going to get a super roster. Like we're not making a super team again. So if we readjust our expectations and be like, all right, now we're going to be responsible for building up a developmental thing, that's got to be how we judge ourselves. And that is sad because it's been a nice window of enjoyment for being in contention for the title. Maybe we strike gold though. Maybe we strike gold.
Yep.
Nick Moore says, whoa, I never thought this would be the first move off season. Yeah, so agreed there. So sad to see him go. He changed the academy and amateur scene for good. And then Nick says, what's your favorite Trust the Papa moment? Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I mean, personally, it was when we got to go and interview him. That was very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-pandemic, even. Yeah. So,
for those of you who may not know, we did an in-person interview at the Cash App compound with PapaSmithy. Wasn't it like right before COVID happened? It was like February 2020
February
or something.
2020. Yes.
So that's on YouTube still. You can find it. It was a really interesting conversation. And
it'd be fun to go back and watch it. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it would be. He's very gracious with his time, and that was before the program really turned around. So, and we also did the whole Trust the Papa campaign with the shirts that we're wearing, and we were able to donate a bunch of money to Mental Health America. So that was really awesome of him. So it's hard to pick anything other than that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I would say the other time I would pick is also connected with that. I used to have this clip pinned on our Twitter. It is no longer there, but the original Trust the Papa reveal on stream was extremely fun to do. When I used to have the apparel wall behind me, right? I had all the 100 Thieves drop stuff hanging there and the jerseys and everything. And I got that huge banner printed for Trust the Papa, and I had it behind there, and I got to stand up and reveal it right when everything was happening, and then got to take off my sweatshirt and have this shirt underneath and everything. So that was really, really fun. It's hard to pick stuff other than that. As a side note, I also really have enjoyed when I do VOD squads and he shows up. That's the thing, PapaSmithy, Uh, so often in our Discord, in our streams, in the streams of other like smaller players in the LCS, like very present, and that's really cool.
Mhm.
And something he would do is like when I'm watching VOD Squad, and it would say no spoilers in the title, and then he would show up in chat, and I would remind him every time. I was like, "Hey, we have not seen the result of this game," and I know I can read. It says no spoilers. I think that happened like 3 times.
That's
So
great.
that's my honorable mention. JC101 says Team Liquid is scaling down their roster. Papa's vision no longer fits what management wants to do. Dignitas is selling their spot, which is that confirmed, by the way?
News to me, but
JC
you know
says
where
it
I
is.
sit on the news. Yeah.
And LCS broadcasts are reportedly changing next year. Is the LCS itself scaling back? Is the era of inflated salaries and older players coming to an end? Yes. Switchbox, by the way, says Dig is not selling their spot. It was rumored, but they are not. Switchbox very current with things like that, so I'm going to trust that for
He's
now.
in the know. Yep.
But yeah, yes. I think the era is going to come to a close at the end of this year. I expect to see a lot of like broadcast talent changed out. We already know. Why am I blanking on his name? The caster who already said he's not. This is the Australian guy.
Pastry time.
Pastry time. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Pastry time already. He announced he was not going to be part of the broadcast. A while ago, a few weeks ago, right? I suspect we'll see more of that. And honestly, like maybe it's time. I've made the point that a lot of the current broadcast people, desk people, they came up in the scene with the 2013, 2014 players, with the early stuff. And it's kind of like, they hold on to a lot of that. And it may just be time for a change there, even though I like them and I respect their skills. Like, they're a big reason why I actually stuck with watching 100 Thieves, because it's like, oh, this broadcast is actually way more professional than I thought. So, but yeah, I think there's going to be changes there. Re the PapaSmithy release, your boy Graph says, I'm very anti this move. Unless there's a ridiculously good other option, this was a poor decision. In before Gilhoto comes and I switch fandoms. Which, yeah, that would, there are worse things that can happen. Like if we have solo in top lane next year, then the pod's going on hiatus. But I feel your pain, Graph.
Solo's just the gap guy. He would get us through the General Sniper, Cole.
The DeMonte of top lane, if you will.
2 years of solo to look forward to. We'll see you guys in Tears.
My goodness. See you on the other side of that one. Big Chief Wolf says Papa references that the direction 102 is going to not align with him. Also references how proud he was of their talent development. Matt, meaning Nadeshot, has referenced the pressure for the quote win now mindset of LCS, which he definitely talked about this year on stream. Are new faces more likely in spring versus promoting up? So the question of, are we gonna bring in outside people or promote our talent? I'm in the we're gonna mostly, well, not mostly, we're gonna promote talent for sure. I think I would be shocked if we didn't see Busio Tenacity, maybe someone else from Academy, but I do think the new people that we bring in are going to be more developmental as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be tough. Like I don't think we'll see like the, hey, introducing the 2023 100 Thieves Academy team. Strike that. It's the LCS team. Like I don't think we're going to see that.
Yeah.
Which some teams do. So we'll have to see some new faces. Question is how many. I don't know.
Yep. And then one final take from SLJ, first time taker. PapaSmithy has talked multiple times about how important it is to develop and grow young talent to keep a thriving scene and improve NA as a region. In his time as general manager, 100T has produced some of the best talents from its amateur and academy system: Busio, Tenacity, Copy, Poom, Kenvi, etc. We'll put
Luger.
Luger in there as well.
Yep.
In his statement, PapaSmithy said he did not see eye to eye on what is next for 100T. I believe that 100T will no longer look to develop talent and will focus more on shopping for the next big import rather than focus on bringing up their young, hungry talent. This is very worrying as an LCS fan because the last thing I want is to have a team with a bunch of old, washed EU players looking to retire in my region, looking at you, humanoid, and taking a spot from our young and hungry to prove themselves academy players. So I love this take for the EU hate.
Yeah, you took a turn straight down your alley there at the end.
Yeah. So we talked about this point with, bringing in people, spending, all that. Jordan and I don't think that that's going to be the case. We think we're going to be very developmental next year and bringing in the young, hungry talents. And, we'll keep applying the pressure from the 100 Talk community to not take EU players. You know how much weight we have to throw around.
Yeah, right. It's a good thing we've got our seats on the board, Cole.
Yeah. And Goodburton points out, I think accurately, Humanoid did look pretty good in the first couple weeks of Worlds here. So, all right, we've said much tonight. I want to just one more time express gratitude, man, for what a fun window this has been where we were so good. And the memories of getting the first title. We don't know what's going to happen with the roster. We assume changes are incoming. We know we've already said goodbye to PapaSmithy. We're very grateful for all of the hard work put in by him, all the community connection that he's helped to foster, leading us to our first ever championship. And that was just unbelievable. And we will always remember all of this so fondly. So it's sad to see him go. With the players, I mean, we might have legit ultra memed by having Someday on Sejuani in his last game for 100 Thieves. A throwback to the old days of put Someday on carries fans in the Reddit. I love these guys so much. Someday, closer, Abudaga. I know community is kind of like back and forth about Abudaga. I love him. I love FBI. I love all these guys. It is hard for me to imagine a world where this is not perma favorite roster that Under Thieves has ever put together. You know,
I got to go let my dog out. So I'm going to say take care. I'm going to ask you to close this out. I'll be right back, but please don't let me keep you.
So I just want to say I'm going to miss those guys so much, and I'm glad that we had the time that we did. I'm grateful for, we're talking about like, hey, this is kind of sad and maybe surprising to see PapaSmithy go, but grateful to those who made the decision to bring him here in the first place. Remember, this was not a GM hire. This was a hire from broadcast, where we took him in. So, grateful for those who were responsible for that decision, for the staff's hard work this year and every year. I'm glad that we have the people that we have, man. And even though we didn't get the results we wanted this year, which is probably just all we wanted was to feel better about the end of the year than we felt last year. And I don't think we got that. I still it's way more fun watching a team that wins almost every week in LCS than it is, struggling to cobble together some wins and make it to 500 or whatever, So, I know everybody's a little bit upset or panicked or whatever and not feeling sure about what's going to happen. But the truth is we've had a very good window and everybody on both sides of this decision is responsible for that. So, as fans, we were lucky. We were really lucky. And we'll see what happens in the future. We don't have to be all doom and gloom about it. Could be that we strike gold. Could be that the other teams can't put it together in the right way. And it could be that we have some great scouting from whoever the next GM is, or our prospects like Busio really pop off. There's a lot of fun possibilities ahead. And I think that is going to be what I choose to focus on, just like I chose to focus on just appreciation when I watch these guys play what is presumably their last games. I'm going to choose to focus on the exciting roller coaster that is surely coming, and hope that, we get a fun, competitive squad with good personalities that we like to watch. And that's all we can really hope for as fans, So Hunter Talk is not going away during the off season. We'll do a pod about roster pretty soon. We've got a few other ideas for pods that we'll do in the next coming little bit. So stay with us for that. It looks like Jordan's actually back, so we'll give him a second. I was just telling him, Jordan, that we have some off-season things that are coming up that we'll be doing. So we won't be in every week kind of situation probably during the off-season, but we won't be quiet either. So just keep an eye on our Twitter. If you're new here, which there are actually a bunch of new people, and a bunch of new followers and subs and stuff, please follow us on Twitter at 100talkpod, 100talkpod, and we'll keep you updated on stream schedule and everything during this off season. And we have a few cool things to do for you, so stick around. But yeah, that was our 2022.
It was a good year.
It was a good year. It is insanely difficult to contend for a title 3 splits in a row, and that was achieved. And
yep,
that was really fun to watch. So, all right, everybody, that's it for now. Hope everybody can process what's happened and feel better about it. And we'll always throw it back to trust the Papa.
Yep.
And like we always say at this time, we love you and we miss you already.